Yes, this is the Jim and Terry Show, coming to you with the rock edge of today's current sound. That's Jim's great falsetto. He's a lead rock singer. But in the Hobbit hole, we're just two retired guys wondering, well, what have you heard? And I'm going to set it up this way. We had our first episode looking at the corruption of Paula White and the Trump Easter egg corporate sponsor. And what I'm going to roll on to is the title, tentatively something like The Creep of Corruption. And I'll start with a church because that's where you're familiar and that's where we started in the first podcast. But then let's look at the creep of corruption in government and link it to today's issues with Canada and the United States. How about that?
Sure. I don't
Your
know.
lead. What have you heard?
I don't even know where you want to start. I mean, everything that seems to be coming out of the leader's mouth is a lie. Everything that any criticism of him is just a witch hunt. And, you know, this latest blunder of them letting the attack plans out where a publisher, Jeffrey Epstein, saw it, and he could have commented even, but he just sat and looked at it go
This
through.
is the editor of the Atlantic Monthly.
Yeah, he thought it was a joke until the bomb started falling, and then he thought, and I do believe it because he didn't release the dialogue. He just simply said, I was in on that and I shouldn't have been, basically what he was saying. It wasn't until they all lied and said, no, there was no talk about anything.
Let's be specific because the devil is always in the details. Yeah. So who testified where about what that created the lie?
Well, when they were in front of the Arms Committee or what?
Yes.
That committee, and the people asked all of the people that were in on that call, which was absolutely everybody who's anybody in.
So specifically, they had Tulsi Gabbard, who's the Department of DNI intelligence.
Yeah.
They had
J.D. Vance.
Was J.D. Vance in it?
Yes, J.D. Vance.
Oh, this is on the call. I'm talking about in front of the testifying.
No. Yeah.
Okay. So there's two groups. There's a small group, and apparently there was a larger group. I don't know. But who's in on the chat? That's one issue, the Signal chat. But the testimony in front of the Congress, and was it the Senate Subcommittee on Arms? Who was there where they asked the questions, did you do this? And they said no.
No, there was no talk about it.
There was no strategic talk,
none
no
whatsoever.
specifics.
And it turns out the type of plane, the type of drone, the exact time they were going to drop the bombs. See, if that got in the wrong hands, they would just move stuff and then shoot them down because they will know they're coming. And it just really put their military at risk and could have killed people and sorry, you know. And so Epstein just decided to come out forward with
after
they denied it.
They lied in Congress, and that's where we got the problems. It's one thing if you're going to deny it just in front of the cameras at a news conference, getting onto your military plane to go to whatever country. It's another thing to say it in front of your sworn testimony. I promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yeah, and they just lied flat out. But there's no repercussions, you see.
None.
Like Trump didn't say we're going to get to the bottom of this. He goes, no, I wasn't there.
So do you expect, a la John the Baptist, a head on a platter? And is it Pete Hegseth's head that you want to see, or Tulsi Gabbard?
I don't think they're going to do anything.
No consequences.
None, because I think what's going to happen is I think Trump will look at that as his bad choice. And he can't have a bad choice because I think he thinks he's God. I'm not sure, but he can't have a bad choice. So I doubt if anything's going to be done. As a matter of fact, what Trump's style is more like, I'm going to put 25% tariff on all automobiles coming into America.
Create the distraction.
And everybody goes, duh, over there, like, squirrel. Yeah, we look over there. That's how he does it.
So you were thinking of the 25% tariffs on auto. Yesterday was announced to follow the Signal catastrophe.
Yeah.
Okay. So
and distract it because everybody's talking about the tariffs all around the world, talking about the tariffs. So sure, he's going to do it. Do I think he's going to leave those tariffs on?
Okay.
Yeah, I do actually.
The title of this was going to be The Creep of Corruption. It was a nice little CC
Have you seen the creep of corruption?
There you go. You can make a jingle out of it. Okay.
Have you seen the creep of...
The creep of corruption, we were talking about it. So let's go back to your favorite topic, which is the creep of corruption in the church, because that was our first podcast for this week. But you, while the mic wasn't on, said a whole bunch of things. Keep it simple. And you said there were 4. So what was getting done that was not right? Why did it get stripped to 4, and what are the 4, and what is this? What does it even mean?
Well, what happened is that there was this council in Jerusalem.
This is going back to the New Testament.
Going back. And what brought that up is someone I know is converting to Catholicism. And I don't want to get in an argument with that, but like 3 or 4 months of training to become a Catholic. And the person that told me this, I pointed out the scripture, and I wish I could remember. Remember, this is just 2 guys in a coffee shop, so I can't remember.
We're in the basement.
But I did a Bible study yesterday on it. And what it was is this council in Jerusalem was about how the Pharisees who were believers, or the Sadducees who were believers in Jesus, said you have to follow the law of Moses, you have to be circumcised, everything else. So there was a big kerfuffle. They discussed it. And they came to the conclusion, and convincingly, that no, we're not going to put on the Gentiles something that we could not keep up ourselves. So we're not going to do that. Why load them down with this? Because we couldn't do it. Thus, the reason for Christ brought it down to... And so what they did is they sent a letter off and decided it was like 4 things. It was like, don't drink blood, don't eat the animal that's been strangled, avoid sexual perversion, and one other basic thing.
So you mean the 10 Commandments got reduced to 4?
Well, they did say that Moses has been preached in every street for many years. So this was part of the discussion, because I'm not going to say for a minute that all of a sudden you can just do anything. If if you shoot your neighbor's cat, you can eat it. Now, I'm not saying that. But what it brought it down was back down to a more simplistic area. Remember, the people that they were going to report back this good news to were people who had been baptized with the Spirit of God and everything else. So now you've got the teacher, the Spirit of God, in there with you. You don't need all the other stuff that, number one, we're not Jewish, we're Gentiles. That kind of thing. So it is brought down to basic faith, and then just do basically what is good. And what did God bring it down to? Love your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's it. And it brought it down to that. So now we've got like televangelists saying all of a sudden, no, if you give me $1,000, you're going to be able to be rich and all the rest of the stuff.
And live a long time.
And live a long time. You're God. You're
speaking on behalf of God when you're making these claims.
Yeah, when you're making these claims.
Okay.
And no, I'm sorry. It's just not the truth. And it complicates things, and it makes people think they can earn their way to heaven.
Okay, so I'm getting it back to the theme of corruption creep. Yeah. And there are 2 areas that we're looking at. One is the history of the church. Throughout its 2,000 years of history, corruption has crept in, whether it's how many rules you have to keep, and whether you're a Sadducee or Pharisee at the time of Jesus, there were hundreds and hundreds of rules. And you're right, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah. And Jesus was very upset with the 630 added things you must do if you're going to be a good person. Of course, you're not going to be able to be anywhere near that.
Of course not.
And of course, the people that told you had to do all this couldn't do it either.
So now let's take the look. Now that we know that corruption has crept into the church and it's difficult to manage, how about into politics and into the Trump administration?
Yeah, of course, it's gone in there. We know everybody in that whole administration. It seems like everybody, part of the criteria, is that the right way?
Yeah, criteria
is to lie.
Yeah.
You just lie. I mean, we see the lie. You'd have to be nuts
and to
not
kiss
to see it.
Posterior.
Well, that's part of the lying, isn't it?
Yes.
I think of that beautiful little blonde that's the press secretary, every day getting out there and lying.
Caroline Levitt.
Every day getting out lying.
Yes.
And don't do it.
Blonde-haired, blue-eyed.
Don't take the job.
At
Trust
least she doesn't
me.
dangle her
Turn
gold
away.
cross.
Better to be poor. Turn away.
Better to pluck your eyes out than to see some of this stuff. Better to cover your ears.
Yeah,
So
cut your arm off. Cover your leg off. Everything.
Jim and Terry Show. We got solutions to the corruption creep. Bye-bye.